Welcome to my grandpa's train. So this locomotive I will be opening up is not mine. It will be for someone who requested my services to fix this up. And if you look carefully on the box, it is not from where I am. This actually came all the way to me from Australia. All right, let's see what we have inside that is going to be serviced and restored back to life. See how it goes up here. In the back for these. All right, so from what I understand, this is a small motor 326 locomotive, and it needs some tuning. Some electrical work sounds like the main issues here. So we have to redo the original wiring harness, which is damaged or broken. And we'll go over a few other things and give it a once over and make this thing run like new again. We'll take this over to the bench here shortly. So this is interesting. This locomotive says American Flyer instead of the American Flyer lines like the 326 or 322 that I've worked on before. All right, let's see if this does anything. All right, sounds like the reverser is cycling, and it looks like the headlight works, and that is about it. All right, let's take this over to the bench and see what is going on underneath. Okay, our 326 is on the bench, and we're going to get inside this and see what's going on. So the main issues is the wiring going between the reverser and the motor. So we're going to work on that and diagnose it. First thing I'm going to do is remove the shell from the locomotive and the tender. All right, so good. All right, let's see what's underneath the tender shell here. Okay, this has the different horn. I was actually working on my diesel locomotive that had a horn that was not in good shape. That looks like this. This is the inside of that speaker. It's not very, a little different looking. Alrighty, let's see. That one's new. Alright, we'll get our soldering iron fired up and get a few things unhooked. Alright, we're going to do some work on the locomotive next. And took the shell off the locomotive, and I found a service sticker put inside by a locomotive repair shop from Lansing, Michigan. Serviced by Moser Train. July 7th of 2003. So, 21 years ago was the last time this has been overhauled and repaired. It does look like it's in pretty good shape. We'll have to see how everything is holding up. It looks like there's some moisture around the smoke box. I'll have to check the gaskets on that, and then just give the motor a once over, make sure that's good to go. Unfortunately, I don't see a build date in this locomotive shell, but I'm guessing that this one is actually a little bit later built. Yeah, you can see that there's some oil dripping from the smoke unit. Okay, I hooked up the motor, and considering this was serviced by a dealer 21 years ago, I'm curious how this is going to run. Looking at the motor, actually looks like it's in really good shape. It does look like it could use a little grease though. It's pretty dry in there. Let's see if this thing runs. That runs great actually. So there won't be a whole lot to do in the motor side of things. Just clean off the commutator pretty much, and then the locomotive should be pretty well good to go. Like I said, the biggest issue we're looking at is the connection between there and the tender. So we will get to that soon. Well, I'm making some progress on the Australian Flyer steam locomotive. I built a new harness out of super flexible 22 gauge wire, And I marked the 2 leads that go to the field coil, so I know what's what when I hook it up in the tender. I spoke with the customer about doing some repairs on the smoke unit. Now, I recommended that I replace the seal underneath because it was leaking smoke fluid all over the place. And because smoke fluid is rather expensive, don't want to have it leak too much. What I found is that, as is typical for these old smoke units, the angel's hair material, as it's called, turns to a brown goo and sometimes becomes rock hard. So I took apart the bottom and I found, as I suspected, that the angel's hair was starting to turn brown. It actually doesn't look too bad. It's brown, but it's not a massive goo yet. But on this side, resistor looks like a dead bug, actually. But so that's how it turned completely black. Now, the reason it was leaking, I suspect, is because when this happens, when these smoke units turn black like this, or they go bad, when you first turn on the engine, you get a huge cloud of smoke, and then it will diminish very quickly. That is the sure sign that the smoke unit is done and it needs to be replaced. As I tested this initially, I got a huge amount of smoke output. It was really impressive, and then after a few seconds it dissipated to almost nothing. And when it does that, you may want to add in more smoke fluid to make it smoke more. Well, the angel's hair isn't absorbing any, and it just sits in the bottom. You can see this bottom cardboard gasket should normally be able to hold back the fluid, the smoke fluid, but there was so much smoke fluid in this chamber that it completely soaked through this cardboard gasket. So both sides of it are completely soaked. And as you can see, when I take my hot iron here, I can evaporate some of the smoke fluid like that. Same on this piece here. Alright, well, when I have this repaired and put back together, I'll show you how things are going. Alright, it's time for an update on this locomotive. Most of the work has been done in the tender with the reverser and the wiring harness. That's been repaired. But I'm actually going to talk about what I did up in the locomotive first. Motor runs great. It always did run good. I just took it out, cleaned it a little bit, and then gave it some extra grease and oil. And that's been serviced. I also actually completely rebuilt the smoke unit in this. The smoker was very anemic. It would output a little bit of smoke at the beginning, and then it would hardly output anything as it would run. So I talked to the customer, and we decided that, yes, go ahead and replace the smoke wick, which I did. Also, the bottom of the smoke box was leaking, and the cardboard gasket, which is right here, this little gasket was completely saturated with smoke fluid and would not seal anymore. So that has been replaced with actually RTV. It's high temp, made just for like car exhausts and applications where it needs to seal fluids and also resist higher temperatures. So I'll show you how I did that in a different video, not today. Then we're going to move back here to the wiring harness. This was the major issue with this. The original wiring harness, on some of my locomotives, I like to salvage these if they are savable. However, this one was definitely not, and the customer mentioned the wiring harness was broken and not repairable, and I confirmed that was the case with that. This is some silicone coated wire that's very flexible and will last a long time. So one thing I did was actually, because I used all black wires, is the 2 wires that run to the field coil, I actually wrapped with a bit of green tape just to mark what those were, and that made completing the wiring much easier. And then in the reverse mechanism, all I had to do was basically do the general normal routine cleaning of it, and it operates just fine. One brush plate has been replaced. I did not replace it. I just adjusted it slightly and rewired everything into it, and now it operates almost as good as it ever did. I did replace a couple wires in the tender as well. You can see the red ones I've added here. Now the speaker for the air chime horn, actually the speaker cone itself is in really good shape. The customer did not want me to make any modifications to that, so I'm leaving the air chime horn as it is. So the next thing to do here is I'm going to be putting the tender shell back on, and then I will take this over to the track and we will test run this locomotive.